Hello and welcome to the Hollow Knight No Storage Out of Bounds speedrun route. This route is currently being run on current patch. This route was recently updated in the last couple weeks or so. The run used to be run on patch 0.6, which is the release version of this game. So this game, as you saw just there, starts out with a glitch, a minor glitch as we would call it, to drop into the map before you're intended to have control of your character. And this is done simply by pausing, unpausing the game to gain control, and then to get out of the stagger animation, we do what's called an inventory drop, or a menu drop. And what that does is you just simply open your inventory when you're in mid-air, and the devs never intended you to ever open your inventory when you're in mid-air, and because of this, they never added coding in to cap your momentum. And so you're able to gain momentum going downwards. So in general, if you haven't seen this game before, top left is my HP and also my soul. My HP is denoted by these little masks up in the corner. And my soul meter is that little circle in there. And the soul meter serves a dual purpose. In this game, what you need to do is you need to attack enemies to gain soul, and you can use that to either attack with using spells, or you can heal yourself using that. So it gives a nice little balance between, you know, choosing to make a fight last longer, or choosing to output a little more DPS. So the glitches in this game are very dependent on the idea of storage, and that's just something that we call it, but really what it is you're storing the physics of different animations. So you're canceling different animations, and that does a couple different things with the physics. So what we need to do at the start here is we need to pick up this map here, because the way you initiate storage is just by double tapping your quick map button, and that will bring up the map interface, and we'll be able to interrupt animations whenever we want to. So the first part of this run, about the first 4 minutes or so, until we get Vengeful Spirit, is pretty much the same thing as no major glitches or glitchless route. And a no major glitches run is actually the run that was run by Oro at SGDQ 2017. So just kind of a main overview between all the categories in Hollow Knight. You've got 100%, true ending, any percent, and a couple others, and all of these each have subcategories to differentiate between the glitches you're able to use or not use in any of them. So we have all glitches, no storage out of bounds, and no major glitches. And what no major glitches is it allows things like inventory dropping, things that wouldn't break open the game at all. No storage out of bounds is all glitches, but it excludes one glitch called storage out of bounds, and what that glitch does is it allows you to get out of bounds at essentially any room transition. So this run is a bit different from storage out of bounds or all glitches, where you're going to be in bounds almost the entirety of this run, whereas all glitches you'll see a lot more black screens, and there's off-screen movement that you can't really see. It's kind of the biggest differentiator here. So this is False Knight, first boss of the game, and what's kind of interesting is the devs actually put an intended skip in here. So right here on the left side of the screen, you'll notice this wall here. That piece, supporting piece, busts off, and we're allowed to get out of his arena early. So this lets us go and get Vengeful Spirit here, the first upgrade of the game. So you could do this casually. You could go and get this upgrade, then go back and face False Knight again. However, if you go back into False Knight's arena, then you're not able to escape again. It's reinforced. So there's going to be a couple things going on here. We're going to initiate a tech storage, so we're allowed to move during this cutscene. And then by inventory dropping into Vengeful Spirit there, we can gain control of our character, and by leaving this shaman's hut at the exact perfect timing, we're allowed to skip her entire side quest, which is very beneficial. It's about a minute long, so pretty big save. So right there, this is the first use of our float glitch in the run. And I was talking about animation canceling earlier, and this is the first use of that. So with Vengeful Spirit, we open things up a little bit more, and you notice there when I casted Fireball twice, your character stays suspended in midair with 0 gravity for a short amount of time. So by canceling the animation at the first part of that animation, you gain 0 gravity physics, and with that, you maintain your constant height. You're able to jump up at a max height after going through a transition or after getting hit by an enemy. So there's a number of different types of P-float throughout, or different types of float throughout this run. That was just one of them. There will be another one coming up here to skip another significant portion of Green Path. So in this next room, we're going to get regular float, and this is a slight variation on float. So we store our Fireball animation there, and that gives us this float here where we slowly descend. And this actually is canceled by going through a transition, which is helpful for us. So along with the animation canceling, since you're canceling an animation, this works with a lot of different types of storages, but actually missed the storage right there and got the one I wanted here for P-float. But you'll see me cancel this, or cancel the P-float right up here by casting Fireball. And what that does is it allows the animation that I interrupted to finish. And so it reinstates the intended physics after the animation is completed. And that works with a lot of different things that you can store throughout the run. So there's like bench storage that you're going to see in this run. And I guess that's kind of it. Bench storage and Fireball storage you're going to see. And by resitting on a bench and by firing another Fireball, you finish that animation and are able to cancel the physics. So here's just another use of regular float. Oddly enough, by turning around on the first frame after landing, you cancel that stored action. So we're not entirely sure what causes this, but for some reason, turning around on the first available frame, or having your first action be turning around, this is Hornet, but turning around releases your stored action. So entering into Hornet's fight here, I got text storage off of the opening cutscene, and what that does is it allows us to move during the cutscene and get closer to Hornet while she's talking and attack her a little bit early. And we'll be getting text storage on this item here and quitting out without having to watch the text that would normally show up for it, that item. So now we have dash, which really opens up our movement options. Things start to get a little bit more exciting. This also gives us access to Fungal Wastes, where we'll be heading to get the next movement upgrade. Typical Metroidvania type game where you head around the map, get different movement upgrades, different abilities, and then you're able to traverse into new areas and do new types of things. So the first part of this speedrun is going to be focused almost entirely on just getting all the items we need to complete the game. And then after that, we'll be focusing on completing the objectives that we need and then heading towards the final boss. So the fight with Hornet that you saw a little while ago, while we are moving towards our wall jump ability here, you notice that she was staggering, and this game has a unique mechanic to it where the bosses will stagger after a certain amount of hits. So essentially what they have is a stamina meter, and each boss's stamina meter is slightly different. But for Hornet, her stamina meter is at 6 hits for the initial stagger and then 5 afterwards. And how that works is if you need to get consecutive hits within a certain amount of time of each other, and that will reduce that stamina meter, and once it reaches 0, it will stagger them. And you can continue that, and for Hornet, you can just stun lock her. There's other bosses you can do that to as well. So here's another use of P-float right here to get up left into this room ahead of when we're supposed to. Cancelled again by a fireball. So now right down in here, we're coming in the back entrance to Mantis Village where we can get wall jump. Neat little way there, pogoing off the mantises to get up into this area early. There is a path around to the right in case that pogo is missed, where you can, it wastes about 8 seconds, 8 to 10 seconds, but you can see it there. It's kind of go up and around to get there. So now that we have wall jump, there's another piece of equipment down here going to go and get, and this is our first instance of a charm that we'll see in the game. So this game has two things here. You have charms and notches, and these kind of work in concert with each other. Charms are your loadout for your character, which will determine the different abilities, or it'll augment your character in different ways. So this one here we just got as Dash Master, and this reduces the amount of time between dashes. Reduces that cooldown. So you'll see here our dash speed is significantly increased. And in order to equip these charms, what you need are notches. And each charm in the game takes a certain number of notches to equip. You start the game out with 3 notches, and you can get up to 10 towards the end. There's a bunch of different charms throughout the game, and each of them, depending on their strength and what they do, cost different numbers of notches to equip. So now we're heading towards Gruz Mother. Kind of a mini boss that you need to defeat to open up this area to the right. So just past Gruz Mother here, we're going to be going into Salubra's hut, and there's going to be a lot of things going on in there. First, we're going to start off by getting tech storage off of talking to her, and then that will be canceled, and P-float will be initiated by storing a fireball. And then with that, we're going to be buying a charm called the Shaman Stone. And then we're going to exit the hut a little bit early. You're going to see that all right here. So by doing that, we get P-float while in talking with Salubra, and we buy what we need to while we're in there. So this trick right here is called airwalking. This is initiated by having P-float and then ending your movement a couple pixels above the ground, and the game thinks that you're on the ground at this point. So what happens is you're allowed to essentially just infinitely dash across Blue Lake there, and it reduces the amount of time you're spending in that room significantly. So this here on this pedestal is our first, well, I guess our second instance of lore here. This is kind of the main story we're getting to here. These 3 masks that you see here and these 3 ghosts that are going to show up here represent the 3 dreamers of the game. And our main objective of this game is going to be finding the dreamers throughout the map, and we'll be eliminating the dreamers to unlock our way to the final boss. So since we have P-float coming into this dream scenario here, a pretty unique mechanic of Hollow Knight where there's the waking world and then there's the dream world. This is our first instance where we get to see the dream world. Was supposed to keep airwalk all the way through here to the end, but that's okay. But yeah, there's the waking world and the dream world, and this character here is called the Seer, and the Seer is the Hollow Knight's spiritual guide throughout the game to kind of just give general direction about where you're supposed to go, what you're supposed to do next. And she equips you here with the Dream Nail, and this allows you to attack your enemies with it and get into their heads and, you know, kind of read their minds, and it allows you to also enter dreams. This is our main way that we're going to be taking out the Dreamers throughout the game. So now we're on our way down into City of Tears to get the last kit upgrade before we can continue on and take out the 3 Dreamers. So this ability here is called Shade Soul, and this is an upgrade to our Vengeful Spirit that we got at the very beginning of the game. Besides increasing the size of your Vengeful Spirit, this also just directly doubles your damage with it. And that, in combination with the charm that we got from Salubra, which is the Shaman Stone. The Shaman Stone increases your spell damage by 33%. That's going to be our main source of damage throughout the rest of the run, and it's going to be pretty significant. That Shade Soul with Shaman equipped is going to do 40 damage per hit, and our sword or our nail, it's called our nail in the run, it only does 5. So here is our first instance of the elevator glitch. So by walking into the spikes there on the top of the elevator, you store the physics of the elevator, and the game thinks that you're on the elevator at this point. And so by hitting that switch up top, the game tries to move you up with the elevator as it normally would, as if you're riding it. And with that, we can use that extra momentum to push ourselves through a couple different floors and get up here past that door, and we don't have to do an arena fight. So this here is bench storage. The game now thinks we're sitting on a bench, and we're able to interact with our charms there. And what I just did there was called overcharming. And when you're trying to equip different charms and you don't have enough notches to equip said charms, what you can do is overcharm, and by forcing that charm into those reduced slots, you can equip those, but that comes at the downside of doubling all damage intake against your character. So what I was doing there with bench storage was overcharming and then leaving the room at the same time that I unequipped the charm that I was overcharmed with. And what this does is it tricks the game into leaving that charm equipped, but also refunding the state of being overcharmed. So right now, I'm wearing more charms than I'm supposed to, with no negative effects as well. So this up here to get Shade Soul is the second and final elevator glitch usage in the run. So we get the elevator glitch off the spikes on the top again. You can see our character kind of bouncing there. The game wants us to go through the floor, and so we can clip through the floor twice there and get past that door on the right, and then skip a little mini boss that's, you know, 1 level below us right here. And this actually skips quite a lot. Shade Soul is meant to be gold split on that one. Shade Soul is meant to be a pretty late game item. You're meant to go to another area, get a key, bring it back to a shopkeeper who you've saved, pay for that, and then come all the way back here, fight a mini boss, and then get the ability. But we don't have time to do all that, so clipping right through the floor and past that door, pretty ideal. So conveniently enough, the first Dreamer, Lurian, just happens to be right up here. But before we can get to him, we have these Watcher Knights. So right here is a little secret room that leads up to this chandelier. And by knocking that chandelier down, that crushes one of the Watcher Knights down here. So that reduces this fight from 6 of them down to 5. The key to performing this fight optimally is to hit as many double hits on the pairs of Watcher Knights that show up as possible. And as you can see, the RNG that they choose is can be a little bit frustrating. So one thing I hadn't mentioned before is you can see me swinging this Dream Nail at these Watchers. The Dream Nail doesn't actually do any damage, but what it does do is it replenishes your soul meter, as you can see in the top left. That will give you 1/3 of your soul meter back, which is enough needed to fire one spell or to heal once. So it can still be pretty useful in combat, as well as being probably the main lore and story item throughout the game. So this here is Lurien. By using your Dream Nail, you can enter into his dream world. And then here, we just destroy our first Dreamer out of the 3. After we destroy him here, you'll be able to see a cutscene that shows where the final boss is located. And by destroying Lurien, it releases the first of these 3 seals. So I suppose now would be a good time to talk about kind of marathon safety or just run safety overall for this category. So I guess in general I haven't talked about benches. Benches function in this game almost identically to bonfires in Dark Souls, if you're familiar with that. Where you can sit at a bench, it will refill your health, and will also set a checkpoint for you. So if you die, you go right back to the last bench that you sat on, unless you were last at a hard save, and there's a couple different hard saves in the run as well. But from a marathon safety perspective, there's benches all over that you don't normally get in like a world record attempt type of run. One of which is right next to Salubra's hut. If you remember back then, right after Gruzmother, there's a bench there. There's one here in King Station that we can get that actually doesn't waste any time to grab. There's one that's going to be before this next boss. You won't see me grab it in this run at all, but it is one that you can get for marathon safety. As well as after killing the next Dreamer, you almost need to grab that exact same bench, because if you die in that segment, you soft lock the game. So, again, not a bench you would stop at during a PB or world record type run, but definitely something that makes it a lot more marathon safe. This run in general doesn't really have any soft locks that are dangerous besides those. The biggest risk to the run would be dying to a boss or something similar, or failing a skip like the one up to Shade Soul, where it would waste about a minute or 2 minutes or something like that. So there's a skip coming up here in this next room, where this will skip getting Isma's Tear. So this path here, you're meant to have an ability that allows you to swim in acid. But by using float like this, we can, descend very slowly and make it over that acid in time, so we can skip that ability entirely. There's also another ability in another way we used to do that skip, called Super Dash, with the Crystal Heart. And with that, you can position yourself precisely against one of the walls and Super Dash and stay above that acid level. But with this route, we also skip that ability, so float is the best method to get across there. So this room right here is housing one of those safety benches I was talking about before. But right now we're on our way down to Umu. And Umu is the reason this is a Metroidvania, by the way. For obvious reasons. So this setup that I'm doing right here baits Umu around the room, and this serves two purposes. This is one, to get him positioned in the middle of the room here, which allows us to get the most damage on him during this first cycle, but it also exhausts his attack timer. By baiting him around the room this way, it prevents him from going to his fourth attack on this first cycle. So Umu can have 3 or 4 attacks in his first cycle and 2 or 3 in his second cycle. So by getting him to move a long distance, you can reduce the number of cycles, or number of attacks you can do per cycle. And ideally, he would be killed in 2 cycles here instead of 3. But unfortunately, I missed out on one of the double hits with Shade Soul. So that just lost about 20 seconds or so. On older patches, you could actually one-cycle Umu. You could do enough damage to him, and we had enough movement abilities down here. We actually, as you can see now, we're using Float to get past that acid down there. And that's the only way, without Super Dash or Isma's Tear, to get up to here. On older patches and older routes, we had Super Dash, and also Umu had 50 less health. They buffed his health a little bit in later patches. And that eliminated our ability to one-cycle him. So right now, after killing the second Dreamer here, Monomon, we're keeping P-Float throughout this entire sequence because this is the only way to get out of Monomon's chamber here. Again, like I said, without Super Dash or Isma's Tear, we need to get a little bit creative to get out. So we need to keep P-Float to be able to leave. And you'll see that here. This also is a little bit nice because it allows us here to just float up instead of wall jumping the entire way. Makes the climb a little bit easier. So now we're on our way to the final Dreamer, and into the best area of the game, Deep Nest and Queen's Garden. So this area here, these thorns and acid prevent you from getting over to this area without Isma's Tear again. But with Float we can get over here pretty easily. There is a Super Dash, a very precise Super Dash you can do off of the walls there to get past that acid. It's very difficult, and it's actually used in the No Major Glitches run there to get into here. On older patches of this game, besides the option to float there, you could also use a Super Dash storage, which using storage, you could store a Super Dash, and then while holding the button you could walk around and use it whenever you wanted. So that spot right there on the spikes is just, this bottom area is just a little bit overlaid too far up, and that allows us to just fall into the spikes, and it sets our hazard respawn down by that lever. Otherwise we would have to go, you know, around to the left through a little bit of a platforming section to get down to that lever we need to hit. So a convenient little oversight that allows us to get there quickly. So one item that you can get from a vendor in this game is called the Lumafly Lantern. On previous patches, this actually used to be a required item to beat the game, and that's because of toll booths that are in the game. There's a bunch of dark areas, which you'll see right now. And these, as you can see, you can barely see anything without this lantern. And you also weren't able to interact with the different toll booths throughout the map unless you had the lantern in these dark areas. There was also a toll booth here in Deep Nest in the dark, just before the final Dreamer over here. But that was removed on current patch, and that single change alone is what allows us to even run this category on current patch. Otherwise, what we were doing before was getting out of bounds to get past this room that I'm currently in is where the toll booth was. What we were doing before was using a trick called Thorn Warping, and that is a 0.6 patch exclusive. 0.6 and 0.7, I suppose, but it's a really old glitch. Obviously can't use it in this run, but... So now we have P-Float again leaving that room, and here we're going to go through a dev-intended skip, but not the intended way. So this is Hera here. This is the third and final Dreamer. We're coming up to the end of the run here. All that's left after defeating Hera is leaving and then going up to the Black Egg Sanctuary for the final boss fight. One thing I haven't mentioned so far are these toll booths right here. We only get 2 of them in this run, but what these are stag stations. And stag stations are Hollow Knight's form of quick travel. So there's this old stag here, which used to be part of this stagway. And by hitting these bells here, it brings him to you, and it kind of awakens him from this like long slumber that he's been in until your character arrives. So coming up here in front of the Black Egg Temple is probably one of my favorite glitches, even though it's super simple. We're going to be getting storage off of our focus or healing right here. And what this does is it allows us to get out of this cutscene where that door opens on the temple, and we can just walk right through the closed door, just right into it. So there's, in this game, there's 3 different endings that you can get here after fighting Hollow Knight. And those endings depend on your items coming into the fight and also your actions during the fight. The ending we get here is the bad ending because we don't have enough items to trigger the other 2 endings. There's also a neutral ending and a good or true ending, which are both triggered by the same item, but would take quite a while to go and get. And that category is actually a separate one entirely called True Ending, where you would go and get that item. The nice thing about this fight is even if you die during this fight here, you are sent back to a bench that is just outside this room. So even dying to the final boss, you're only going to lose about a minute or so if you are able to beat him on the second attempt. And with that, the run is over. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Hope to see you again soon.